Okay, checking to see if I've got, yep, says my internet connection's unstable. That's great. Hopefully that won't be the way through the whole evening, or this recording will go down in flames. And let me go ahead and put my sound back on, and I've got three of us here. Find out who we got here, and I'll greet everybody. And glad to see you here, and Abdul, glad to see you here as well. And I hope everybody will remember Miss Martin, who's down in Florida. I got a message from her today that she is, they're still without power. Hopefully they'll have it in a few days. And so she was down there, but she's okay and safe, and so that's good news. I'm sure we'll have some others join us, and of course, as usual, I'm going to go ahead and mute you guys, or if you would mute yourselves so we don't hear the dog bark or anything like that, or any bad rap music. I don't know. I'm kidding you guys. But anyway, we'll go ahead and get started tonight, and I'm sure we'll have others join us. This is, of course, the 12th of December. The 12th of December, right? The 12th of September, and we're in week 5. And there are some housekeeping and some things that we need to get rolling with before we get too far into the evening. One of the things that, and when I mentioned housekeeping, is just simply this: we have a couple of assignments that we're due this Perelson chapter 5. That assignment was due tonight, as well as the Manili text exam number 1, and then the case quizzes, the case quiz and case 3 follow-up. So we have a lot of those kinds of assignments that are due, and then I'm going to come up over here for a moment just to the syllabus, of course, which lists out all of these assignments, and you can see, and I'm going to go. Let me go to the settings, and I'll go to student view, and we'll go over to the syllabus. And again, we all want to offer our prayers for the people down in Florida, and don't forget the people down in Texas who got it first and are now in the most difficult part, and that is trying to reconstruct their lives and everything. These are the assignments that are all due, okay, this week, and the quiz, the exam, and then on the 19th, you have the group software project, and this is where the file, the MS Access file, should be loaded. Then there's a Microsoft Excel file included in that assignment that should be uploaded there. And then the group software project, the Word document. And so that should be done by the team leader. And then you've got these Manili, the exam, and then another case follow-up, a case quiz, and then Perelson. And then on the 21st, that's due, you have one more database case. And I'll tell everybody what we may work on that tonight. And then on the 26th, which is the last night of class, this is a session where I'll expect everybody to be on board, because this is the business movie exercise, and and my intention is to kind of go through everybody's participation. This is a plenary session, so by that what I mean is it's the one time I want us all here real time to do it. And so we'll move back over here now for today. And of course, this is the 12th. You can see the assignments that are due. And I want to pop over here again to the modules, okay? And I want to move down to week 5, which is where we're at. And so far, I have looked at some of the stuff some people submitted. It looks pretty good. I do want to make sure that I bring to your attention these 3 resources, okay? And this really has a lot to do with some big trends that are occurring out there in IT. And this is an article. It's kind of a critique of what was on display at CIS, which is a big tech convention where different manufacturers and companies show off their new technology. They show off their phones or whatever they've got. Then this is this is a use of what we call IoT, the Internet of Things, and the AIG insurance company, their work on using it. And then this is this gives you a sense of kind of a strategic change in Microsoft, who has moved away from the browser to now a multi-device environment. They still push Windows products, but they're pushing them on the cloud. And Microsoft is trying to become kind of ubiquitous in terms of what it does with multiple devices at the user level or just below. The same as we have some companies. I would say probably would be AT&T would be one. I think certainly Oracle would be another, that are trying to kind of be the pipeline that carries stuff. And because that's the easy part, it's the content that becomes an issue. I also wanted to go out to take just a quick look tonight at a couple of things involving IT. I think it's, if you watch much of the coverage of the hurricanes of both Harvey and then Irma, you'll discover that we have made some tremendous advances in terms of understanding these storms and what they do. And one of the things that's interesting is that if I'm from Oklahoma, so I'm a weather junkie, and when there are really two ways that people like the weather channel or a CNN or someone follows these events. Is really, it's kind of a three-pronged thing. They use a lot of data that's provided by the National Weather Service, including radar data. They get a lot of their other data, not only just where the thing is at and its size, but they get intensity data from buoys, basically, that are dropped from planes that fly through the hurricanes. And this is from the old days when the people would fly out there and they'd get wind readings. Now they drop these buoys and they start giving data, and so they have a real sense of what's going on with the hurricane and some just really incredible stuff. There was one article over here, and I wanted to talk about it with you for just a moment. Over in the business section of the New York Times, okay, and they have a fantastic three really good articles actually. One, this is about the iPhone X, iPhone 10, and that event, and it's being introduced. It'll be interesting to see what is involved there. And then there's a nice article here that's a good retrospective of the first iPhone, and then how iPhone has evolved over time and become this device that encourages two things. One is what we call ubiquitous computing. In other words, there's not really much of you're really almost computing all the time in one way or the other. If you're carrying your phone, you are. And the notion of mobile computing. And those are two things that 15, 20 years ago, people just kept thinking, well, it will probably be a miniature laptop, or what you and I would think is a tablet, but it's the phone. And what will be the future of the phone, who knows? But we're in an era where increasingly there are going to be more things embedded in devices, and I think by the time a lot of you reach my age, carrying a phone will be almost a thing of the past. You might have an object that does everything for you, and I think these these little watches that the Apple and people like that sell and so forth, that'll probably be the device. You know, who knows? But it's worth your while just to pop over here and take a look at these for just a simple reason. There's also another, I think, big event that's brewing out there, and that's the Equifax scandal. What they've been doing. Of course, you know, as you're aware, they got hacked, and they are really under intense pressure from the public, especially about doing something and dealing with some of the problems that they've created, and seeming to put a little more of a sympathetic public face on all of this. So there are some really good stories there, and you know, and that's out of the business day. I want to click the tech part and see if there's anything different. Okay, this is an article about the Apple keynote, what's going on there, and so that is something that's worth your time and energy to take a look at, and I would really encourage you to do that. And I think it's going to be interesting over the next several weeks, months, as the recovery efforts occur in these two huge disasters. What's really striking is that, and as I watch the coverage, time after again, the reliance on Google Earth, the reliance on satellite imaging of what was there and what's gone, is just striking. And it's striking to me how many strides we've made in terms of using and developing geographic information systems. And so I think that's going to be something that certainly is worth your while and to take a look at. One of the things I wanted to do tonight was also to kind of reemphasize what I was after in terms of the group software project, and to emphasize that. And I created some discussion board areas where people, I hopefully, were collaborating and getting their groups together. I hope everybody has gotten into a group. It looks like maybe they have. And let's just look at these instructions for a minute, because I want to talk about them in terms of something more than just a set of assignments. What we've done, as I've said, as I've emphasized over and over, is that IT is decision-centric. It's about using peopleware, hardware, and software to take data and create information that we can use for decision-making. And then that information that we use for decision-making, if it can be applied and in multiple occasions, it becomes what we call business, what I call knowledge. And then if that knowledge is applicable in a lot of situations, we accumulate some business wisdom. At the heart of all that, of course, is for the manager, really for all levels of management, is a dashboard. Every organization has a dashboard, whether they know it or not. They may not even, they may have it's scattered in several departments or in on several systems, but they all have 3 to 5 bits of information that they need to have every day or every week or maybe even every hour. And the ability to chart all of that and to pull it together is greatly important. Right now, and there are going to be some case studies written about this through the years, and I wish I had the security clearance to get in to learn some of it. But as you've been reading about these collisions that have been occurring, it's important to understand that 90% of the world's goods move over water, and of exported goods. And the United States Navy is in all of those major shipping places. The Gulf of Hormuz, of course, is one where you have all the oil that comes, that Mideast oil that flows through the canal zone. You have there in the South Sea China and that whole swath of the Pacific, where all the Philippines and Vietnam and the two Koreas and Japan, that is a highly traveled road, if you will. And so it shouldn't shake us when we have some collisions, although you don't want to. But the bottom line is that that's extreme. First of all, you're dealing with vessels that are with instruments that are so huge that you just don't turn them on a dime. And the other is that you're dealing with often very adverse kinds of conditions. And so I think that what we're going to find is that there may have been some linkage between the people where the software and the hardware on those destroyers, that somewhere something failed. And typically what happens is somebody misreads something, okay, or they don't have good data, or maybe someone just doesn't really, maybe at the human level, because the Navy's the Navy, and they have lookouts. They still post people on the bridge, and it may be that the figured grounds are not made like they should. And if it's hard, it may be issues with their signature. Who knows? But I think there's gonna be a combination of things that come together. And I say that because what we do know is that if you look at airline disasters, they're usually the product of a perfect storm, and IT's usually in the midst of it because of cultural issues, or maybe because of instrumentation misreads, or any one of a number of things that can occur. And so it's going to be an interesting thing to see as that moves on. Now I want to talk about this group software project, because in this project we go through a process, really a three-step process. And the first step process is here in part A. And this is the process where you're going to go into that book, The Hypersocial Organization, and extract data, okay? And that's the extraction process data. And that's extraction process, creating those items. And then the second piece of that is going to be the storage phase, and that's where the Access database comes into play. Databases are meant to be a place to store information. We've talked about the concept of a data warehouse, and it's important to understand that concept means I have a warehouse that's comprised of several databases that are all linked some way or the other. Or I have a database, okay, that has a whole bunch of tables connected together, okay? And so that's a warehouse approach as well. And we use queries to extract the data. Now, here you're building a table, okay? And so when you guys upload your part A, it'll be an MS Access file. And just so, I'm going to close this I'm going to go ahead and close this thing, okay? And I've given you guys an example of a database that you can use and you can get started with. And let me get down here. Here it is. It's called Example, and it is published. And I'm going to download it to the desktop so we can see. Okay, and so when you hear me say, well, a warehouse could be a database with many tables that are linked. Yes, okay, because ultimately, some people say it's probably, if you're talking about databases connected into one, you're really talking about enterprise computing, or you're talking about mega warehouses or whatever, or maybe a cloud, okay? But the bottom line is that you have you have to have tables that are linked, okay? Or you have to have queries that give you the ability to link those tables or to pull data from them. And we didn't get that far because we didn't do that much with Access. But here in this example, I'll show you. Here are I'll open it up and we'll put it into this view. Okay, this is of course, is the data sheet view. And then we'll go down to the design view. And you can see the question ID is an auto number. And what that means, that keeps you from duplicating questions. Then here's the question and the field, the data type in a memo. Okay, and the difference, the choices of a text versus a memo, etc., are fairly arcane and a little bit beyond what you really need to know or work with in this course. Then the correct answer, then the page, then the chapter, and then a degree of difficulty. And I gave you some descriptions, some guidance, and I said basically what you can do is download this database and populate it. Now, here would be one of two ways to populate this, okay? One of them would be to use a form, okay? And I'm going to close this off for just a second, and let's open this form up. And here you can see that this form, all right, I've got question, and you can add questions to it, and you can put the page and all that. So you could use this form if you cared to. And the whole idea is to make the input of the data more intuitive, and also to make it easier for you to search the data. Okay, and if you'll notice at the bottom, I can navigate a record at a time, or from the first to last record. I can do a free text search. It doesn't matter, and this thing can be customized. Now, I'm going to close this off for a minute, and I'm going to click on the database tools, okay? And I'm going to click on the thing called object dependencies. And one of the things in working with a database, now almost all of you, if not all of you, will probably be working at a semi-administrator level or below, which is a end user, or maybe somebody who can have some administrative controls with your database or your piece of the whole enterprise system, whatever, okay? But you always want to be thinking about data flow and data streams, okay? And this is really almost like the same concept when we talk about with cash flow. When you really talk about, cash, okay? I got a degree in finance. The one thing you learn is that money flows in, cash flows in, it gets converted, okay, and then it generates new inflows of cash. But cash is the blood of a business. The only thing more valuable than cash in a company, I think, is information. Because if you don't have the information, you can't get the cash. And frankly, everything pretty much starts with a sale for everybody. So you've got that process of collection, and then that conversion process. It's the same thing with information, okay? Because what you have, if you have a table with 100 questions or 20 questions or 50, I don't care, you really don't have anything at all. It's when you run the query, okay, that is, you start to ask questions or you start to look for data that you start to get something. I'm just going to put in and this is a parameter query, and it lets me find the chapter. Now, how do I know it's a parameter query? I'm going to go down to the design view, and here in the criteria, I have created a parameter, and I've put this, please select a chapter, and I've put this in brackets as a criterion, and that creates a parameter query which limits the scope of what somebody can get to. So that's one of the things that, and here's another, okay, and in terms of that. But if you'll notice, we've got objects that depend on me, and you'll see here there are no objects, and there are the 4 types of objects: tables, queries, forms, and reports. Those are the 4 basic types of objects in a database, but objects that I depend upon, and you'll notice they depend upon the table questions. Same thing here Same thing here in all 4 queries. Same thing for this form. Okay, and then the report, same thing. So it's dependent upon the questions. So a database, I can go in and look at a database, and I can pretty much tell you the information that's important, the information that's not important, and how stuff flows. Okay. Now, in that so you have that example, and then what I've asked you guys to do, and we'll go back to the group software project instructions. Let's go back to that and download it again. We'll open it up. And I asked you to put the questions into the database. You said, well, why would it have stopped me from instead of using the form that you created, why would it stop me from just entering the data in the create a table, enter the data? You can. You may want to make it hard for yourself. Good. You said, what would stop me from taking an Excel file, for example, and dumping it into the database and creating a table? That'd be fine as long as you have the fields, as long as you have them formatted, etc. I'm good to go with that if you do an import. But again, if you have a form and a table, it's already. So we've collected the data, okay? And then I ask you to develop and execute the queries. And there are the 4 queries, okay? And this is an extraction part where we're getting the data out of the table and we're executing the queries. Then we have part D, and I ask you to develop some reports based on the queries. Okay, this is now into what we call the conversion process or the reporting process. And I ask you to export them to Microsoft Word and keep them in a single Microsoft Word document. So a reporting, so we collect, we extract, and we report. And those are the basic kinds of things that we do in this process of taking data and converting it into information that we can use. So again, that's the mechanics of it. Now, the real part and the challenge, and I think the Perelson text does a great job, is talking about the issues of things like information governance, the question about who owns this, and what data should we include, and what do we share with other departments, and all of that, and that's the management piece that's really difficult. Now, I went ahead and I wanted to have you guys work with the hypersocial organization text because, as I mentioned before, you have the emergence now of this tool called a social platform. A Facebook, a Twitter, Instagram, goodness, I guess you could also say LinkedIn is another one of them. And there are companies out there saying, I have a solution for a problem I didn't know existed. Okay, this is a real change for them and a real struggle. And that's why I chose to have you look at that book so that you could start to get a sense of some of the early thinking on what do we do with this stuff. Now, this is a different kind of experience for business people, okay? And because when business people when we worked with the first computers, okay, we understood exactly what they were designed to do, to take the input data, process data, and output it. And so you'd have a giant computer that had, the size of your living room in a cooled built environment, and it might have as much horsepower as your laptop. That's how. But the programming languages were not well developed at that point. We didn't have things like object-oriented programming, and so like when I did my dissertation data, I ran it using what was known as a punch card, and I still have the punch cards out in my garage. was just amazing. If anything was out of place, the whole program stopped. But the point is, we understood that. And then when people said, well, I have computational work to do. And so we started seeing the development of spreadsheet technologies. And that makes sense to business people, because business people are always about what happened last year or last month or last week or today, and then also trying to look ahead and say, well, what'll happen? And if you open up Microsoft Excel, you'll see, if you click on the data tab, a what if section, where you're going to find the goal seek, you're going to find the scenario manager, you're going to find the data table, and then of course if you go to the add-ins, you can add in Solver, which is an optimization tool. And business to business people, this makes sense, okay? And they have an intuitive understanding of databases, and they kind of understand, well, recommendations. Okay, yeah, the database is gonna. I have this intelligent agent of sorts, if you want to call it that, that will make suggestions for what people ought to buy. And the best one of them, of course, is Amazon. But this thing called social media, they don't get. Okay, and that's primarily, it's a factor because look, I started in I had the second dissertation at the University of Oklahoma. I was the second graduate student there to use computer science as my language. There were no computer science courses. You just went and took a class with somebody who taught the computer language. And so I had to take classes all over the university in order to be state of the art. Well, that's all changed, of course. But people, the social media, and I'm going to go, oh, okay, I kind of see it, I kind of get it, I kind of understand it, but I still have to really stop and ask myself and think. Okay, and when I look, one of the things that never ceases to amaze me are these videos that somebody posts on YouTube, and 25 million people watch a cat jump on a refrigerator or something like this. And it's just, and I'm thinking, the people in Hollywood or the people in New York City or the people at the networks or the people at HBO ought to probably just going crazy, because they spend hundreds of millions of dollars on content, and some 15-year-old films makes a video of a baby burping, and that thing gets 1 million hits. So this is a sea change, and I ask you to go ahead and look at that book to try to understand how we're using these platforms, and it takes some different kind of thinking. Now, I would say, and this is just I don't want to get too far afield, but I think it's important for me to put that book in context for you. In the days of late night, I've always been someone who watched late night television programming, okay? I go back, I remember, probably none of you have ever even heard of who Jack Parr is. He was really the first late night host. And then, of course, you've heard of Johnny Carson. Maybe you were old enough to have even seen him, but those late night programs were designed to create really an hour and a half originally, then back down to an hour of entertainment, and you might get 20 minutes of something really funny or really good, and then the rest you kind of worked through. Today, if you take people, and we'll take the two protagonists, Jimmy Kimmel, okay, and the kid that's on NBC that does their late night. I can't remember his name now, but Jimmy Kimmel's on ABC. Then you've got, of course, the guy on CBS who after Trump, he's running more of a political show, which is just kind of like a throwback to the way the old time talk shows were. But each one of them, because they're of that generation that grew up with social media, they get it because they tailor their programming content to be able to be condensed into a YouTube clip or a clip that can be shown at the CBS website or whatever, and they do that, and they design their programming on purpose to get viral moments, and that's just a different kind of thing, and it drives cable companies crazy that people binge watch. So that I wanted you to see that, because we're just now coming to grips with social media and how do we use them. What are they really all about? What do they do for us or not do for us? And I would say this, although I would bet you that Mark Zuckerberg could tell you 25 things he knows that Facebook can do and is designed to do, I don't think he has a clue about where it's going to be in 20 years. I don't think any of us do, because it's uncharted territory. If you're a marketer, it must drive you. It'd drive me crazy if I was trying to market a product. I go to Amazon and somebody from somewhere I don't know, I've never heard, writes a horrible review, gives me 2 stars. Okay, and there's a lot of effort to try to make sure that it's kosher, that it's a real review, and not just a plant. And of course, then you got the whole thing of the elections where you had this issues about fake news and all this stuff. Now there's some revelations coming out that the Russians developed people on Facebook. Unbelievable. Who'd have thunk it? So it's that book. I know the younger one, those of you who are really younger are going to get this, and you're going to see a lot of this. People of my generation, I see it intellectually. I understand it. I look at YouTube. I binge watching or listen on YouTube. I have a Spotify account. I get. I can listen to the music I want to listen to anytime, anywhere. I understand that the YouTube, but some of the stuff with Facebook and people my age. Here's 75 pictures of my grandkids. Nobody really cares. Here are 53 recipes my mother gave me. Nobody really cares. Here's pictures of us when we were all in 3rd grade. And I'm going, okay, is there a better use for this? And let me tell you, during the election, it was interesting to see everybody and how inflamed people were in their discussions. And Twitter, that's another thing. Wow. And we have a president who uses Twitter, or someone tweets for him, okay? But he gets it. He just bypasses everybody and goes straight to the public. And he's driving people crazy, whether you agree with him or not. I think, regardless of what he accomplishes or doesn't, I think he will go down as probably our first real 21st century media, 21st century, our first president who understood 21st century media. He understands viral moments. He understands how to use social media, and the tweets are. And it's interesting because he's got everybody's attention. Everybody's wondering, what's he going to tweet about next? What's he going to say next? And as long as he has that, he's dominating the narrative. He's controlling the narrative of presidency. Is no longer run by the New York Times, the Washington Post, and maybe the Wall Street Journal. The narrative is really driven by that man in the White House who's tweeting at 5 in the morning, and people erupt and they react. So it's an interesting thing, and I wanted to shed a little bit fuller light on why I've included this, so that you'd see this process of collection, extraction, and reporting, and then also hopefully you'll read that book and you'll take a deep drink of it, because there's a lot of things there that it shares that I think are, some of it's really good some really good looks ahead, and some good coverage of what's going on out there. Again, it's one of those things that's evolving, and now as someone who's interested in technology and in finance, what for me is fascinating is the valuation of these companies. How in the world can these companies be worth billions of dollars? Well, it's intellectual capital. And what we've seen, I said this at the start of the class, we've seen this flip from where the values of company were tangible, about 80%, 90% tangible, 10% intangible, to now it's just reversed itself. Branding, all of those, that type of thing. I teach the undergraduate MIS class, and it's been interesting the past 2 weeks. In fact, it's going to be going along for about 4 or 5 weeks. I've asked them to tell me which one of these will become the dominant player in selling consumer goods, Amazon or Google. And it's interesting to see the responses. And those are two companies that have some interesting history. Amazon has the best recommendation engine and the best web services in the world. That's why people like the United States government purchase their web services, because they're so good at it. But what they don't have are what? A real estate footprint. They have a digital footprint. And if you go to Walmart, Walmart understood very early that retailing in the 20th century was all about location. And so they started out in little regional centers, small towns, and then gradually worked themselves into where they're almost everywhere now. And now they're struggling with this issue, this thing called the cloud, the internet, and people want to buy it. Now I've bought from Walmart online, and then when you go pick up the groceries, and I really didn't have the kind of experience that I liked, especially around items that weren't there that I ordered, and they'd substitute stuff, okay, and I just didn't like that at all, and so there wasn't a dialogue, and that's something they got to get fixed. Amazon has a footprint, but its footprint is more in distribution and delivery, and Walmart doesn't have. Walmart has that in terms of the movement of goods, back office, but not the front office kind of thing. So it'll be interesting to see those two companies and how they duke it out. Well, I wanted to go into some depth so you can understand why I added this group software project, what that was all about, what I was trying to accomplish. I'm going to close this off for just a second, okay? And I want to talk some about the last couple of modules and some things that we've got going on, and some of the rationale for why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I think it's important for you to take a peek behind the scenes, if you will, and see, why did I serve you pizza tonight and hamburger next week or whatever, that type of thing. And so I'm going to come down to we've got the project instructions, we've talked about that, and I'll give us something to upload here if I haven't already. I'll find something. And here we have the group software project, okay? And then I'm going to open this up, and we have the business movie exercise, okay? Now this is a plenary session, and this is what I want everybody here, all hands on deck. So if you listen to this, I really want you here, because I want to go through, I want us to share and have kind of a seminar experience on this exercise. And I want to show you the instructions, okay? And basically, I'm going to have you create a Word document that contains a response to the exercise, okay? And then I want you to select 5 movies that are about business that you've seen. Now, I want you to get me the movie title, the year, production company, and then a URL to the movie's data at IMDb, TMDB, allmovie.com and TCM, and the Open Movie Database. So there are several databases out there where you can get, to a varying degree, information about any movie practically that's ever been made. Then I want you to go use a URL, a link to 2 or 3 books about every movie you select. And so you go over to Barnes and Noble or Amazon, okay? You say, why are you doing this? Well, I'm doing this because I want you to see, okay, first of all, how these intellectual properties, these content are handled, how they're cataloged, and how they're linked. And also, I'm a great believer that in graduate education, you should have some of those moments where you do some pretty unfettered kind of reflection. And I think movies are an excellent way for you to stop and talk and think about this profession that you've chosen and this degree that you've chosen. Why did you choose to get an MBA, and what is it all about, and what does it mean to be in business? And I think movies help you see that dramatized to a certain extent, and also work with some databases and you know and see how the database, how Amazon and the Barnes and Noble, how those are created, okay, and what's there, and then rate those movies. Okay, I even want you to do a YouTube clip for each movie you select. Okay, and what you're going to find out is, when I was growing up, you went to see a movie, you shelled out your money, and you took your chances. Today, you've got reviews upon reviews upon reviews. You've got spoilers and spoiler alerts and clips from you. And if you really want to, you can pretty much know what you're going to get into. And the price of a movie, if you go to a place like an IMAX or something like that, if you got a family, you can drop $100 real quick. So movie going can become expensive, but I think movies also, I used to have my students report on books, and of course, and to me that's just so passe, but movies about business, I think, and I think you're going to find some. I know you'll find 5 of them, and I'd like you to report on it because I think they help you do some reflection, because they have a story, but wrapped within the environment of a business context. And let me say this, the portrayal of business people today in the movies is not very positive. And there are some good reasons why. And it's a little different than it was, say, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But I'll be interested to see what your favorite movies were, why you selected them, because I think it will let you reflect a little bit about the profession, and it helps us raise some questions and bring into force some questions. And I think I have my own, which I'll share that night. And you'll probably see a very big generational difference in terms of the movies. But I want to give you something novel to do, something different that you could talk about and feel comfortable that there's not a right or a wrong answer, and kind of enjoy yourself, maybe have a little fun. I think that the movie business itself is so fascinating and so interesting, and in many ways mirrors what's happened in the country as a whole. And one of these days I'm going to put together a course. I've toyed with it, a course on the movie business, and I think it's just fascinating. I love movies. I love to watch them, and I think it's a fascinating process. And I'm hoping that it'll be an enjoyable process for you, because I want it to be something you enjoy, a way to cap the course off, because frankly, I know all of you have worked very, very, very diligently. And I appreciate that. And I know that the graduate school is a grind. If you're working and you're sitting through, my haranguing you here for an hour or whatever, it can start to be a deal. So in my mind, this is a chance for everybody to share and for us to learn a little bit about each other, but more importantly, to see some of the types of questions that arise. Because while it's a course in IT, okay? This is also a course about people and how they respond to technology. And, you know, the text, and I think the Perelson text has done a fantastic job of always coming back to the managerial issues involved, okay? And I think especially the chapter 3, where it talks about organizational technology and culture, I think is exceptionally good, and helping you understand that, you know, every new technology that comes along just doesn't get embraced and adopted. And I'm going to give you an example. The industry I work in, universities. You would think that university professors, with the education they have and the knowledge they have, would be they'd be all over every new technology, and they'd be all over learning management systems and all of that, and distance learning and using the internet and World Wide Web to produce. And let me tell you what, I'm one of those. We're not a majority. Majority of faculty and instructors still, with a little modification, want to deliver content like they did like 1,000 years ago. Somebody stands up there now. You say, well, Dr. Harmon, you've been lecturing here for almost an hour. What makes you so different? I understand that. But but you do know that there's a minimal amount of lecture, and I don't test you over lectures. I have exams over quizzes, over books, things of that, and I have case studies for you to do, and we've done some lab work, and so I really believe that education ought to be something that is accessible in the nth degree. And so that's why I'm a great proponent. But let me tell you what, I have many colleagues, not only just at the university, but I could take them from any university, who would say, what I'm doing here is not really educating. This isn't really a course. People don't really learn anything, that type of thing. And frankly, I said this to one of my colleagues one time. I know you believe that I'm out there dealing with a bunch of disengaged people. But I said, I have taught sections in 50 to 100 to 175 students at a time, where the kid on the 25th row in the dark, and I'm down in the pit, that person is no more connected. He might as well be 1,000 miles away, because he's no more with me than anybody in the world. And I grew up in an era where, you know, it was not uncommon in big, gigantic courses as a student to see somebody down front. Usually somebody would sit in the back, they'd be reading the paper. Okay, and it would aggravate the instructor, and the instructor would have to stop everybody. But I remember sitting in those big, gigantic classes going, this person's not, I can't go talk to this professor. And I taught in some of those courses, and trust me, they were distance courses. That people they might as well have been 1,000 miles away. So, and we're still trying to learn, how do we tailor this and provide engagement for you, and so we're still in the infancy of using these learning management systems in a way that really gets you nailed in. But this is why I wanted to include the business movies exercise, and I wanted to talk about it for a little bit before we went on. So I'm going to go back over here for a moment to the to the modules, and I am really looking forward to the business movies. I'm hoping I think it'll be a fun time for us, and I think it'll be just fascinating. Now, I want to take a moment just to look at some of these case follow-ups, okay? And I want to talk about them for just a moment. And I'm going to have to leave the student view in order to do that, and look at the speed grader, and we'll pop through here. And usually what happens is I start at the first person. So instead this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the last and then work my way back. And again, we want me thinking about Miss Martin, who's in the middle. Lots of problems down there. And we'll think here with Dimitri. And he chose he had a choice of cases 7 through 9, and the issue of the connectivity, okay, and the management school. He's got a nice summary here, okay, the importance of IT-based innovations, okay, and this is nicely done. He got a good summary, and he's talking about the arting, and he gives us some good reasons here in terms of why you know, why that would be interesting to him as a manager. And I think the creation of an app for a startup, yeah, innovation, and he's talking here about some of these platforms and the success of Shopee's, okay, and then the article about Toyota's attempts. This is a nice job here, okay. And he talks about using if we had an app similar to peer-to-peer, in our case, production distributor client, we could connect all the change or distribution system. Yes. Now, see, that's the kind of insight that's important, because then you understand that value chain. And early on in the text here in Loudon, they talk about a value chain approach, moving us out of this silo, so that and again, so that data flow. And so I think that this is an excellent job. He's done some good references, beautifully formatted. Thank you so much. Nice job there. Let's see what Thomas did. And he looked at UPS, good. A fascinating company. And some about its IT governance strategy. It is, I think is a very fascinating case. And I think UPS is, and FedEx, my wife worked at FedEx for a long time, and UPS is another outfit. I admire them because those they're all about performance, and it gives us some nice data here about what's going on with their stock price. Then it gives me a list of articles about the current state of the core of that case, and there's some good stuff here. And a lot of people are really focused in on, and again, Thomas, I don't think maybe Thomas is here. Let me check and see. But if you're not, and you hear this, let me say this: you have my compliments, because I think that UPS is taking on probably the most challenging thing that you could take on. FedEx does too. I think those are two companies that take a lot of courage to exist, a lot of courage to run, and a tremendous amount of savvy. And you can go over to the New York Times real quickly, and I'll show you something. Let me do a quick search here. Amazon and their warehouse, and they had an article, I believe it was Amazon. And their warehouse. I'll just search Amazon. The Amazon robots, here it is. Oh yeah. This is fascinating. Now, this is from the New York Times, okay? This is from their Daily 360. And it's just it's interesting. And they show you the fulfillment center, okay, there, and look at the robots. Is that incredible or what? Okay. And then they talk about the number of workers that they have. And when you look at this, it's off the charts. Okay? And what the environment these people work in, you can see the one behind here that's doing the robot in the order picking. Here's another. This is not your grandmother or grandfather or your daddy's warehouse or my daddy's warehouse. This is mind-boggling when you look at this. But they still got lots of human beings in there running the thing. But they have an enormous logistical challenge ahead of them. And Amazon is one of those companies that very quietly is trying to pilot, how do we mesh these things called robots with human beings? And it's interesting, they start the article telling us about, and here we get the fall of hackers. on the 360. I hope you're getting the 360. I think this is such a cool thing that New York Times does. But you can see, you still got to have human beings, but you can see the robot doing some incredible stuff. I think that's got to be one of those things that you certainly would want to take a look at. So again, a good follow-up article, and then talking about the handheld devices, and then some of the the transition in the package flow technologies. Now, to just show you, okay, on my end, bought some shoes. Okay, went to check to see when the shoes, were packaged and on their way. I'm one of those people now. You may be one of them too. You order something and you want to track it. Where's it at? When's it going to be here? This is not how things were at one point. At one time, a company called Sears had a thing called a catalog, and my parents liked to buy from the Sears catalog, and you had no idea when it would get there. Okay, you just knew you ordered it, and I don't even know if they even had a customer service number you could call. All I know is that the postman would show up, or you'd get a call. That you'd call from the post office and say, "Come down and get your package. Your stuff from Sears came in." Of course, the post office was a small outfit, and everybody knew their name and all that stuff. So I grew up, in kind of an exurb of Oklahoma City. But again, this is a good follow-up because he's talking about how they're using that package flow technology. And notice that phrase, package flow. We talked about that, and the information's got to flow with it. The descriptive analytics, and he mentions that. So this is a very, 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 very good follow-up. And Orion, he's talking about that. Good job, Thomas, and fantastic case follow-up. And I think all I can say is, yeah, I'm like you. UPS does a fantastic, a marvelous job. So I'm real pleased. And look, folks, I look these over before I ever come into class, okay? And as I've told you over and over, I'm not giving you style points. I'm more about, do you see the content? Do you understand it? Do you do some work? Okay, I'm not here to grade your writing or beat you up about that. I'm just not going to do it, okay? I think if you're at work and you do, I don't know how much writing you actually do at work. You might do one big report a year, I'm not sure. But I'm more interested in using this as a way for you to do some reflection, because my hunch would be you learn a whole lot more than you write down here, because you write down the minimal amount of stuff because I've told you to do that. And number two, because you got other things to do with your life than sit around and write papers. Now don't quote me on that, because my other colleagues would shoot me, because that's what they're after. But I'm a great believer that down the road, I'm hoping that as you go through this course, that there's going to be stuff that's happening. You'll go, oh, now I see it. And then later on down the road, you'll experience something and go, oh, that's what he was talking about, or that's what they meant by that. And I think that's a fairly common type of thing. Again. Nice job. Kept it short, kept it sweet, and he talked about the work. And you're an owner of a couple of Toyota vehicles, yeah. And David, he owns us. I can tell you, I'm floored by the technology that our two cars have. How did I live? How did I live without being able to walk away from my car and it just locks itself? How did I live without having an assisted thing to tell me that there's somebody close to my right or even up on behind in my car? How did I live without having to put it in reverse and then I could see behind the car? I mean, how did I live without seats that cool or heat? I mean, what can I say? And I've kind of been tracking over the years, just very, well, I remember the first time I got cruise control, okay? I thought, how did I live without cruise control? Or how did I, in the first car I drove, I learned how to drive on what's known as a standard transmission. One of those things that, you know, you have, I don't know how many people even learn how to drive a standard transmission these days. Probably not much. So you're a Toyota, you own two, so you are a Toyota Fight, and you're into them, and Toyota, great company, and they did a lot of innovative things. This is a nice follow up here in terms of what's going on. Toyota Motor Company is one of the great. Toyota is one of the great manufacturing companies in the world. They invented much of what we know as just-in-time delivery. They pioneered many techniques in manufacturing that are used all over the world today. And so I think they're a fascinating company. And again, that shift in their business model from taking orders to fulfilling business needs. And again, you know, they're in a particular milieu and they run themselves in a particular way, but they're still one of the great companies in the world. And so I'm glad to see that and I hope you, David, if you're not in here, or if you're listening, when you listen to the record, I hope you love your Toyota. You know, and all I can tell you is, you know, I don't drive Toyotas. I had a string of Hondas. I've had every Honda. I've never had an Acura, but I've had the Civic, the Accord, the Prelude, and each of them, particularly the Civic, were excellent cars. The Civic, I had over 350,000 or close to 350,000 miles, and I had to junk it because the air conditioning. It was when they changed the condensers, or was that thing that so it wouldn't put carbon into the air, so they changed the way that the air conditioning units worked. And the dealer, I was living in St. Louis at the time, told me, he said, you know, it's going to cost you more to put a new air conditioner in this car than the car is worth. And that was when I made the switch and bought an Accord, and I loved the Accord. I had, late 80s Accord. It was a fantastic car, and I just loved it. So you get hooked in on cars, but then I switched back to General Motors when I got my first four-wheel drive vehicle, and I was sold. But you know, I lived up north, so you needed them. Anyway, good follow-up here, and the innovation and maintaining their systems, they are probably the best in the world, if not close to the best. Here's case study 9-2, and this is Midwest Family Mutual. Okay, I love this case because here are some folks that are trying to cut down on their carbon footprint, trying to become more sustainable, and you know, it's interesting because you know, I really do believe that when a company tries to go green and they do it well, it's good for everybody. It's good for the environment. It's good for the client, the customer. It's good for that company. And so this is an interesting article and some interesting follow-ups. Okay, and using that as a way to help themselves and get them some good positive PR, and to get a competitive advantage. And you know, look, you know, why would you? I can just tell you that my experience in home buying this time, that's just buying a home. I bought a home last year, was so different from what I ever experienced. Because we got on Zillow, we got on Trulia, we were visiting houses, looking at houses. you know, and finally we found what we wanted, and that's when an agent came into play. And then the process of going through loan application and all that business was just amazing because it was pretty much paperless. The most paper I saw and dealt with was the day we closed. And was scanning and faxing, that kind of stuff. So that whole industry has been changed immensely. So Zach, nice job. And I'm picking on people on the bottom end of the alphabet this time. Now this is quite good. This is from Simon, and looking at the progress chart on Cooper's framework. This is excellent. Nice. That progression. Okay. In terms of flight paths, and very, very good. And he did a follow-up here to their approach, okay? And he's talking about the Mitsubishi and the way that they do, and what was going on with them. And again, that the investigations that went on into that company and what they were trying, and what in their competition with Nissan. Again, good job here, okay? And looking at the situation where folks are manipulating the data, okay? And so, and we've seen the same thing with Volkswagen, that has really suffered a tough blow. And this is Miss Martin. Of course, she hasn't submitted anything. And folks, she's down in Miami. Offer a prayer for her. As I said earlier in class, I got a message from her. She was okay, but was sending me information by phone. And we have one for Amma and Amal, and excuse me, and the Midwest Family Mutual again. And it makes sense. See, there are some companies that make sense that you really would focus on this. And I think it's companies that are extreme, that have what I call extreme physicality or an extreme intangible kind of environment. And let me explain what I mean. When you look at the UPS case, for example, here's a company that's everything about it is it involves physicality. They're moving stuff. FedEx is the same way. The railroads the same way. The shipping company. These are people, and logistics people work with physicality. And so I think that approach of trying to go green and to use technology to deal with that is very important. And then I think there are other firms that are great candidates, and those are those which handle intangible products and intellectual capital. I think universities are one, and I think we're seeing that, although universities still a lot of resistance there, and we still yet to have the big money flow in to fund the kinds of learning management systems or things that can really take all of this to a different level in terms of your learning experience. Imagine if you'd come into Canvas and you did a little survey, and Canvas knew exactly how you learn, the best things for you, and just tailored you, and you just had your own tailored experience. Boom. Would that be fantastic or what? There are folks working on that, but it costs money to be able to do that. So I think this is a good case follow-up. I'm glad you selected it. And again, this is one of these instances where we have a firm that deals with intellectual property, selling insurance, trying to exploit technology, and it makes tons of sense. Science companies are another one of those. And we got Lisa Taylor, and I always get good stuff with Taylor. This is I'm glad to see it. Good. You did a follow-up in terms of Midwest Mutual, and yeah, he does think that what they are doing is a little bit off the beaten path, and I think it is. I think it's interesting if you look at some of these companies. Like what comes to mind to me is Progressive. Okay, where any of these intermediary, I think what are fascinating the intermediaries, especially in travel. Okay, the travel. I know that travel agents must just go crazy when they see all these intermediaries, Midwestern Mutual is trying to go green and try to be sustainable. You've got companies like Progressive who try to use that same approach as well. And I think he pointed out here, number 2, Taylor does a good job of pointing out some of the issues, okay, that go into coaching and development, motivation, and that's the peopleware part that really becomes very, very important. If people don't see that vision and they're not bought into that vision, that becomes an issue. And I guess when you've looked at the FBI case, the Perelson text, is it one of those stories or what? And I mentioned that because the other night I saw a reprise of a documentary that was done by PBS Frontline about this is a story of a guy who worked at the FBI counter. He worked in the 90s, who kind of discovered bin Laden and discovered this network that we now know as Al-Qaeda, but because of bureaucratic infighting, because the culture of the FBI, the guy kind of got run off. And what the irony is, he ended up becoming the head of security at the World Trade Center and perished. And you may want to go look in your guide. You may even see that document. I think Frontline put it out. But I thought, boy, is this a case study? And it was fascinating because he had all kinds of data. He had all kinds of information, connections, and red flags. And it just did not hit. It just didn't hit anybody's radar for a very simple reason, because of the silos that they had and some bureaucratic infighting. So I think this is a very, very important point. And this notion of the stockholder theory and notion of stakeholders, I think, is excellent application of theory and a very good one. So Taylor, nice job. I really liked what I saw there. I'm going to take a couple of more here because it is 7:15, and I said I'm going to keep you here till about 7:30, and as I usually do. And then what I plan to do is a supplemental. I plan to do a supplemental recording, a screencast of a last database case, because we have one more that you need to upload. And that, I think, will pretty much finish those off. This is another of IT governance, and Dylan, nice job, and see that you're here with us. A nice link there to what's going on with them, and good. And I think the UPS case and the question of who owns information is, I think it's one of those issues that gets itself played out in a variety of ways, and I'll give you an example of that. Many times, especially in strategic planning, you'll get a group of people who do the strategic planning for a company, and they own the data, and they don't share the data, or they share bits and pieces. Another one of these questions in terms of governance that's developed that has a real practical bent that I'm interested in and involved in to a certain extent is the development of dashboards. Who at what level gets to see or know what's going on? Okay, and the whole issue of governance, excluding privacy, okay, and ownership is tied up in that question. And so it's a good choice of topics. A lot going on in that case, and I think one that you could follow up for years. It's always going to be going on because they really do have to manage information, manage it well, and then that brings the question of governance up. We'll take a look at what Marcus did. He looked at Johnson & Johnson, which is, I think, absolutely fascinating, this notion of trying the one-face strategy. Marcus, thank you so much. That's an interesting case, and following up on that. And Johnson & Johnson, here's a company that's trying to handle multiple products in multiple venues, and this notion of using IT to create a one-face strategy, one person who becomes the focal point for really a person who kind of it becomes the matrix, and trying to use a matrix approach, but you have that one person who's the face of the company. And I think it's a fascinating study. So, Margaret, thank you. I think it's a good case study. I think and you did a pretty good job of following it up there in terms of giving us some of the sources that you pulled the information from. And that's a tough one for them, because Johnson & Johnson has been, although it's publicly traded, has been really a family company for a long time, and those are difficult situations. And then we'll come over and finally we'll take a look at the IT structure, trying to kind of see who we're talking about here. Okay. And Cooper. Okay, yeah. Okay. And their ability, Cooper's efforts in terms of restructuring, and the notion of divisional information officers. Okay. This is, and Abdul, thank you for choosing this, because I think this is an interesting case, because it's the first time that we see an attempt to make information, to treat information as a functional part of a company, just like we treat accounting or production. And as we've seen the rise of chief information officers, chief technology officers, those kinds of terms and handles, especially in larger corporations, or VP for digital strategy, or those kinds of things. Those are going to go through some metamorphosis as they kind of all get coalesced. This is not too different of what's happened as what happened about 50 years ago with the rise of finance and the rise of the financial manager, and the notion of the chief financial officer of the organization. And at that point in time, finance was just, people didn't see it. They didn't get it. They understand. They thought, well, okay, it's the company treasurer, okay, and they didn't see that the chief financial officer is more than a treasurer. They're the one who takes the financial resources and helps the company strategize with them in a whole variety of ways. So I think it's a fascinating case, because it looks at the development of that particular functional specialty. So some really nice case follow-ups here. I enjoyed them very much. Let me pop back over here, and so we can get back over to we'll close. We'll go back over here, and then we'll go into the modules. Now, again, I want to just mention, let me go to the syllabus. I'll get there quicker. The things we've got coming up, and I hope that everybody's working diligently. Next week, you're going to have the next week will be the 19th, and those are the group software projects, and then that case or another database will be completed. I'll find something for us if I can't remember if I gave us something upload or not, but it'll be a fresh case and something a little bit different, and I'll just simply record it as a supplemental, and then leave it there. But I'm really working forward. I'll be looking over the discussion boards to see how people are coming along with their projects, what's going on. And then on the 26th, please understand, and everybody who listens to this, I assume you all do, pretty much everybody does. This is a plenary session. I want everybody here to share this. I think we can have an enjoyable time. Well, I've kept you till 7:30 or close to there. As usual, you know, I'm good with that time, and then I'll add some additional time in with a supplemental lecture, and I'll look at a database and probably some more of these concepts that we talked about. And I want to go back to them for just a moment, over to the modules, okay? And I really do want to encourage you. Let me close this off. Here we go. I really would like to encourage you, and we'll come down here to the one of these things that, here we go. I would really like to encourage you to take a look over here at the CES Tech and all the stuff that they've got. And remember now, these are people who are rolling the dice, trying to find out what will be the next big thing. And then I think AIG's, I think that's a good resource, and I hope you'll take a look at it. And this one I think is a very, very important, because this is Microsoft in some ways adopting a strategy of trying to be all things to all people, but now it's devices. It's not a browser. It's not a software program. It's not the machine agnostic, well, device agnostic. And that's a little bit different approach than Apple, who is still utilizes what we call a walled garden strategy, where Apple doesn't play well with anybody except Apple. And that was a focus of Steve Jobs, primarily because he wanted control over everything. He was even against the app stores because he was concerned about quality control. And so Apple is that walled garden kind of experience where it plays well with each other, but not too well with anybody else. Whereas Microsoft tries to be agnostic in the sense of device agnostic. So I think you want to take a look at that article. And when I go through the supplemental to this session tonight, I'll show you some other things that are going on in tech that I think are worthwhile to take a look at. So next week, I'm really looking forward to seeing your group projects and how you do with them. And again, it's a process of taking collecting some data, extracting it, and reporting it, and walking through that process, and maybe cleaning the data up a little bit, or dealing with some format issues you might run into. And again, I thank you so much for being here, and I appreciate your time. I know you're busy, and I have tried. Hopefully, this has been an enjoyable experience for you, and hopefully one that's been beneficial as well. I really do believe that as graduate students now, you drive what you get from a course. I can try to point you in some directions, but and probably where I've been the most didactic in this course has been with the exams over the content. So you learn some of the lingo, and you learn some of the terminology, and you see some of the basic concepts. But beyond that, it becomes an issue for you and your imagination or your situation. And I hope, if anything, I've helped you do two things. One, really three things. One, look at the past career, or look at the past few years you've been working, whatever. I see. That's what happened. Or you can see currently some things that are happening at your company that mesh up with what we've been talking about in here, or will help you say, okay, how could I apply this technology out of my company, or what consumer product is out there that will get translated to a commercial product, or what commercial product in terms of IT is out there that will get turned into a consumer product. And this is the thing that makes this a fascinating topic for me, because it's like that. We see applications in technology that are more really intended for business and commerce, and then suddenly it becomes a consumer product. And we have consumer products that suddenly become businesses or business products. And so I think that there's some real food for thought for you there in terms of what you want to do. So I thank you for the time. Let me stop for a minute. I've got 6 over here, and let me see, is there anybody have any questions? Let's see if I can get this to open up. I guess it's not going to let me, or because this is just, it won't let me manage the participants. Anybody have a question? If you could, I'd like to unmute you if I possibly could, but this is not playing nicely with me. So if you have a question, give me a chat. I'll try to answer. Anybody? Okay, I see a chat. Okay. All righty. Thank you so much. Anybody else? Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you very much. So it's close to 7:30. I'm going to wrap it up. And here's what I'll do. I'll record this session. I'll post it in the announcements as usual. And then probably Friday, I'll look at our last database case. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm either going to look at a database case, okay, or I'm going to go out and look at some of the products like Tableau or something like that and give you something to upload. And I'm certainly going to go and do kind of one more tour and look at some of these resources I've got posted for you. So thank you so much, everybody. And I'm going to wrap it up, and I'll add another little bit of time on supplemental lab lecture kind of thing. And keep working on those projects. I'm looking forward to seeing what you do. So I'm going to stop the share and then stop the recording and end it. And again, everybody be thinking and praying for Miss Martin down there in Florida. And if any one of you all are affected by that also, and you haven't let me know, you got to let me know, and we'll try to work with you there, okay? Thank you so much. Have a good one.